Hello, and welcome back to another video to fall asleep to. In this video, we will be talking about cricket. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Imagine a game that takes 5 full days to play, pauses for lunch and afternoon tea, and can still end in a draw. To much of the world, cricket is an impenetrable mystery. It is a puzzle of bizarre terminology, silly point, googly, sticky dog, cow corner, wrapped in an obsession with the weather and a notoriously complex rulebook. But if you look closely, this strange, sprawling sport is not just a game. It is a mirror reflecting 500 years of human history. To trace the history of cricket is to trace the rise and fall of the British Empire, the struggle for post-colonial independence, the fierce pride of island nations, and the explosive rise of modern, multi-billion-dollar Asian capitalism. Let us take a journey through time. Let me tell you the story of how a shepherd's pastime conquered the world. Act 1. The Weald, the Wool, and the Wicket. We do not begin in a grand stadium. We begin in the mud and the grass of southeast England in the 16th century. Specifically the Weald, a dense wooded area spanning Kent and Sussex. Picture a group of Saxon shepherds guarding their flocks. To pass the time, one shepherd rolls a lump of wool or a stone at a target, perhaps a tree stump or the gate to a sheep pen. The gate was known in Anglo-Saxon as a crick or a wisset. Another shepherd picks up a curved wooden stick, a crook, and tries to hit the stone away. That is the Genesis. It was a peasant's game, played by children and farmers. In fact, the very first written record of cricket comes from a 1598 court case over a dispute about a plot of land in Guildford, Surrey. A 59-year-old coroner named John Derrick testified that when he was a boy, he and his friends used to run and play there at cricket. For a century, it remained a rustic diversion. But as the 17th century turned into the 18th, the English aristocracy took notice. And they didn't just notice the game. They noticed the potential for their favorite vice, gambling. Wealthy lords began drafting their estate workers, blacksmiths, gamekeepers, bakers, into private teams. They would wager thousands of pounds on the outcome of a match. And because the stakes were suddenly so high, they needed rules. In the 1770s, the center of the cricketing universe was not London, but a tiny village in Hampshire called Hambledon. The Hambledon Club was the game's first great laboratory. Here, the laws of the game were codified. They decided the pitch should be exactly 22 yards long, the length of a traditional surveyor's chain. They added a third stump to the wicket because the ball kept passing straight through the two-stump setup without dislodging the bail. Cricket was growing up, but the game they played would look bizarre to us today. The bats looked like hockey sticks, and the bowlers didn't throw the ball overarm. They bowled underarm, rolling or skimming it along the turf. The game needed a revolution, and it was about to get one. Act 2. The Doctor and the Empire. As we enter the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution is transforming the world, and cricket transformed with it. Bowlers began raising their arms, first to waist height, round arm, and eventually over the shoulder. Overarm bowling changed everything. The ball could now bounce sharply, swinging and seaming through the air. The curved bats were abandoned for the straight, flat-faced willow blades we know today. And onto this modernized stage stepped the game's first true deity. The speaker steps forward, tracing a wide, imaginary silhouette in the air. Imagine a towering Victorian figure, a massive, untidy black beard, a thick waist, and an ego the size of London. His name was W.G. Grace. A doctor by profession, Grace was a mercenary on the pitch. Before Grace, batsmen just swiped at the ball. Grace essentially invented modern batting. He played off the front foot to attack and the back foot to defend. He was a celebrity of unparalleled proportions. When he played, entire towns shut down so people could watch him. He dragged cricket from a rural pastime into the modern sporting age. But while W.G. Grace was dominating the English shires, Something far more consequential was happening globally. The British Empire was expanding. The sun never set on the Union Jack, and wherever the British Army, the Navy, or the colonial administrators went, they packed a bat and a ball. They took the game to the heat of India, the islands of the West Indies, the plains of South Africa, and the harsh, unforgiving bush of Australia. The British taught the locals the game, fully expecting to always be the masters. Cricket was seen as a tool of the empire, a way to teach the colonial subjects the English values of fair play, stiff upper lips, and obedience to the rules. But there is a fatal flaw in teaching someone your game. Eventually, they will figure out how to beat you at it. Act 3. The Ashes and the Machine. The first crack in the imperial armor occurred in 1882. We have spoken of this in the history of the Ashes, but it bears repeating because of its sheer global significance. An Australian team arrived in London and beat the English at the Oval. The mother country was humiliated by a colony of former convicts. The sporting press published a mock obituary for English cricket, stating the body would be cremated and the Ashes taken to Australia. The Ashes rivalry was born. But as the 20th century dawned, Australia didn't just want to compete, they wanted to dominate. And they produced a man who defied the laws of probability, Sir Donald Bradman. Bradman was a run-scoring machine. In the 1930s, he averaged a terrifying 99.94 runs per innings. He was so impossibly good that the English captain, Douglas Jardine, resorted to a tactic called bodyline, ordering his fast bowlers to hurl the ball directly at the heads and bodies of the Australian batsmen. It caused a diplomatic crisis. The Australian government threatened to sever trade ties with the UK. Think about that for a moment. A game of bat and ball nearly triggered the collapse of imperial relations. But while Australia and England were battering each other over a tiny terracotta urn, a new superpower was quietly awakening in the Caribbean. Act 4. Fire in Babylon. Following the Second World War, the British Empire began to dismantle. Nations were demanding their independence, and nowhere was the struggle for post-colonial identity fought more fiercely than on the cricket pitch. For decades, the West Indies team, a coalition of island nations like Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad, had been wildly entertaining but inconsistent. They were historically captained by white men, despite the players being predominantly black. They were viewed by the English establishment as calypso cricketers, fun to watch, but lacking the steel to win consistently. In the mid-1970s, a visionary captain named Clive Lloyd decided he had had enough of the patronizing smiles. Lloyd looked at his islands and realized he had an abundance of tall, powerful, incredibly fast athletes. He assembled a pace battery, a quartet of terrifying fast bowlers like Michael Holding, Andy Roberts, Joel Garner, and Colin Croft. And he paired them with a batsman of supreme, arrogant majesty, Sir Vivian Richards. Richards refused to wear a helmet. He walked to the crease chewing gum, swaggering with an absolute conviction that he was superior to the bowler running at him. The West Indies stopped playing to entertain. They played to destroy. They bowled so fast and so aggressively that they physically intimidated the opposition. They battered the English. They crushed the Australians. For an incredible 15 years, from 1980 to 1995, the West Indies did not lose a single test series. This was not just sport. This was a profound political statement. For the descendants of enslaved people to travel to the heart of the former empire and physically dominate their former masters on the cricket pitch was a source of unquantifiable pride. As the reggae anthem goes, it was Fire in Babylon. Act 5. Colored Clothing and Cash. While the West Indies were dominating the pitch, the boardrooms of cricket were undergoing a violent revolution. Up until 1977, cricket was still a deeply conservative, Victorian-looking game. The players wore white. They played with a red ball. They were paid absolute pittances by the aristocratic administrators who ran the sport. Then came Kerry Packer. The speaker walks across the stage, adopting a sharper, more clinical tone. Packer was a ruthless Australian television tycoon. He wanted the broadcast rights to Australian cricket. The old guard establishment told him to get lost. So, Packer simply bought the players. He secretly signed up the best cricketers in the world, from Australia, the West Indies, England, and Pakistan, and created his own rebel league, World Series Cricket. Packer understood television. He knew that to sell the sport to a modern audience, it needed sex appeal. He introduced night matches played under massive floodlights. He threw out the white clothes and put the players in brightly colored uniforms. He used a white ball so it would show up on camera at night. He mic'd up the stumps so viewers could hear the players swearing at each other. The establishment was horrified. They called it a pajama circus. But the public loved it. The stadiums sold out. Packer's revolution lasted only 2 years before a peace treaty was signed. But the damage was done, and it was glorious. He dragged cricket into the modern commercial age. He proved that the players were the product, and the product was worth millions. Act 6. The shift to the east and the T20 behemoth. The speaker stops in the center of the stage, the light focusing tightly on them. Which brings us to the modern era, the 21st century. For 300 years, the power and the money in cricket resided in London and Melbourne. The traditionalists believed the true heart of the game was the 5-day test match. But history is a moving train, and the train was heading east. India has always loved cricket, ever since the British introduced it in the 18th century. But in 1983, when an underdog Indian team shocked the mighty West Indies to win the World Cup, a switch was flipped. 1 billion people collectively realized they could rule this sport. The Indian economy opened up in the 1990s, and television money began pouring into the Indian Cricket Board, the BCCI. India had the numbers, the passion, and suddenly, the cash. But the final, seismic shift occurred in 2008 with the birth of a new format, 2020. Test cricket takes 5 days. One-day cricket takes 8 hours. T20 takes just 3 hours. It is fast, furious, and perfectly packaged for primetime television. The BCCI launched the Indian Premier League, IPL. They auctioned off city-based franchises to Bollywood stars and billionaire industrialists. They brought in cheerleaders, fireworks, and loud music. The result was staggering. The IPL is now one of the most lucrative sports leagues on the planet, rivaling the NFL and the English Premier League in terms of value per match. Today, the power center of global cricket is not the historic pavilion at Lord's in London. It is the towering glass boardrooms of Mumbai. The Indian board dictates the global calendar. The best players in the world, whether they are from Sydney, Cape Town, or Yorkshire, dream of securing a multi-million-dollar IPL contract. Epilogue. The soul of the game. The speaker looks down at the red cricket ball in their hands, turning it slowly. So, where does that leave this strange, ancient game today? It exists in a state of beautiful, chaotic schizophrenia. In April and May, the world watches the neon-drenched fireworks of the IPL, where players scoop the ball over their heads for 6, and fortunes are made in 3 hours. But then, the summer rolls around. The colored clothing is packed away. The players put on their cricket whites. They walk out onto a green field under a gray sky to play a 5-day test match. And in those 5 days, the frantic noise of the modern world fades away. You are left with the ultimate psychological battle, a fast bowler charging in from 30 yards away, hurling a hard leather ball at 90 miles an hour, and a batsman standing alone with a piece of willow, deciding in a fraction of a second whether to attack, to defend, or simply to let the ball pass by. It is a game born of shepherds and kings, forged by empire and rebellion, and fueled by modern capitalism. But at its absolute core, from the muddy fields of the 16th century Weald to a stadium of 100,000 screaming fans in Ahmedabad, it is still just a person with a stick, trying to hit a stone.